Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider Podcast, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. My name's Perryn Keys, the executive sports editor. I'm joined today by Reed Darcey, one of our LSU beat reporters, and by the venerable longtime columnist, Scott Rabalais. We're going to go through, obviously, LSU's 56-14 victory over Georgia State, and let's be honest, to be more specific, Jayden Daniels' run toward the Heisman Trophy. We will also get into Malik Nabers' pursuit of the Biletnikoff Award and the LSU women's pursuit of whatever they're going through right now. So we will get into it all. Gentlemen, welcome in.
Morning, Perryn. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're barreling toward the holidays. Obviously, this is Thanksgiving week, but we've got plenty to do, plenty to talk about as it relates to LSU football still, and, of course, the two basketball teams and baseball even as we get a little closer down the road toward the end of fall baseball, and of course they will crank back up in January. So to begin, we will start with a bit of business as we always do. We are brought to you today and every day by Champion Wealth Strategies. Champion Wealth Strategies is a national financial services firm specializing in the capital markets, securities, insurance, 401ks, and college and retirement planning. Our broker dealer is LPL Financial Member FINRA SIPC. As you know, investments are not FDIC insured, may lose value, and have no bank guarantee. But to learn more, go to championwealthstrategies.com. That's championwealthstrategies.com. Contact Champion Wealth Strategies and plan like a champion today. We are here every Monday and Thursday on our social channels, on our YouTube channels, specifically the LSU Tigers on NOLA.com YouTube channel. A programming note will be here Monday and Wednesday of this week because of obviously the Thanksgiving holiday. We figured you'd just as soon have this podcast the day before the holiday break, and we will get into obviously the LSU Texas A&M game in full on Wednesday's program. We are also available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever other finer podcasts are found. And please, while you're bumping around the internet, subscribe to The Advocate if you would, whether that's our print edition or digital editions. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. That's theadvocate.com/subscribe. And get a hold of our newsletter, our LSU newsletter. Rab handles that 3 times a week, but it's a daily newsletter. And as we say, there's plenty to catch up on. And that way, if you get a newsletter, you can catch up all in one place, straight to your phone, straight to your inbox, straight to your desktop. To sign up, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. That's theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. One other thing, while we're getting closer to the holidays, too, if you're an LSU fan, obviously, and you obviously are, if you're tuning into this podcast, there's no better gift than our LSU commemorative championship posters. There's been plenty of them lately. Women's basketball, baseball, and, of course, football from 2019, the greatest season of all time. They're all here, and they're all available in the Advocate store. You can order these now, and they'll arrive in time for the holidays. To do that, you can go to store.theadvocate.com. That's store.theadvocate.com. If you enter the promo code INSIDER, you get 15% off your order at store.theadvocate.com. So, gentlemen, LSU 56, Georgia State 14. This game will not be remembered for pretty much anything other than what it was supposed to be, which was a walkover win for LSU, but more specifically a showcase for Jayden Daniels, who continues his pursuit of the Heisman Trophy. 413 yards passing, 96 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns. And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rab or Reed, but I think we would all conclude that maybe he was in there for a couple extra series just to get a couple more touchdowns because, hey, look, you're on a campaign. You need to do everything you can do. And the coaching staff was certainly willing to help him along there, especially on a day when Bo Nix, the other presumed front runner, passed for 6 touchdowns of his own. Rab, I would get into this first. I don't mind telling you I was a little bit surprised. I was a lot surprised, frankly, at what we saw on Sunday. And what we saw on Sunday was a drastic change in the Heisman Trophy odds. given that Bo Nix had such a stellar day against Arizona State, 6 touchdown passes, I had sort of assumed that Bo Nix would still be the front runner. Last Sunday, he was the front runner. He was at minus 110, depending on where you shop. In this case, we're at Caesars. Followed by Michael Penix at plus 290, followed by Jayden Daniels at plus 425. By Sunday, Jayden Daniels is the front runner, minus 120 at Caesars Sportsbook, followed by Bo Nix at plus 150, followed by Michael Penix at plus 600. Rab, I'll just put this to you first. Were you surprised by the movement in the odds, and where does he stand now?
Surprised that it changed so much that Jayden has become a front runner with some sites, or tied for first with Bo, or if still behind Bo Nix, he's shortened the odds considerably. Especially, as you said, Bo Nix had a great day against Arizona State, Jayden's old team, as it turns out. 6 touchdown passes and 404 yards passing, and I think he didn't play much in the second half, if at all, of that game. And LSU clearly was trying to help Jayden out in terms of getting him some stats, leaving him in so he could have a number that would again wow the voters, and he did it again so over 600 over 600 not 600 yards offense, 506 yards total offense, and the 8 touchdowns, which tied Joe Burrow's SEC record that he set in the Peach Bowl against Oklahoma. Joe passed for 7 and ran for 1. Jayden passed for 6 and ran for 2. So again, it is like with the Florida game when he did the 350 yards passing and 200 yards rushing. It gave him something that the voters can latch onto. And I've said many times, the Heisman is not just about the stats. It's about capturing the imagination of the voters. And I think when you see a guy doing things that have never or rarely been done before, it does that. So and I think how Caesars and these other sports betting sites come up with their Heisman odds, I don't know. One would think they're polling a cross section of voters from around the country. I've never been asked by these people.
Well, but it's also about what kind of money is coming in too.
Yeah, and the money is on Jayden because it doesn't necessarily mean anything to the 900 plus voters around the country, but it's significant nonetheless, and it all adds to the psychological impression that Jayden Daniels has built some momentum here in November, and it's when you want to be searching in the Heisman race, obviously.
Reed, was there anything that surprised you coming out of not only Saturday in terms of what Jayden Daniels did, but then the results that we see now, and just where do you think he stands and what kind of case he has for the Heisman?
Nothing surprised me about what Jayden did on Saturday. I think we sort of expected that from him, just to go out there and dominate. But I was a little surprised that he's now, in some places, he's now the front runner, because going into the game, I wasn't expecting that he could really do anything against Georgia State that would put him over the top, I guess. But I guess if you look at the 8 touchdowns, tying the SEC record, tying Joe Burrow's record from 2019, I think that was big. Just to have that big takeaway number from the game, I think that was big. And if you look at LSU, they clearly made a concerted effort to try to get him as many touchdowns as possible. We saw, I believe, maybe at the end of the third quarter or the start of the fourth, they had a 4th and 1 on the goal line, and they didn't have to go for it. They were up several touchdowns, but they did. And not only did they go for it, but they gave Jayden 2 design runs.
He went under center.
He went under center.
He actually went under center on a short yardage play.
They gave him the tush push, and that put him in. But the play before that, it was a design run to the right. He didn't get in, took a little hit, get out of bounds, made some people nervous, I guess. But it was that play, and then after that, he had the long touchdown to Malik Nabers. He didn't have to be in on any of those possessions. And I think if he weren't in the Heisman race, he probably would have been pulled a little earlier. But again, Brian Kelly said it after the game. Jayden said it after the game. They want to showcase him and give him as much of a possibility to show exactly what he can do. And I think that's what he did, and a lot of voters saw that on Saturday.
And it was a risk on a couple of levels. One, Jayden's health, especially after we saw Jordan Travis suffer this devastating injury earlier in the day for Florida State. And obviously, best wishes to Jordan Travis. But, it was a risk leaving him in physically, and it's a risk to the voters who say, "Look, come on, you're padding the stats here." There could be a backlash because a lot of people really love Brian Kelly to begin with around the country, right? So, but in terms of the odds, it certainly has not been any kind of backlash to this point for Jayden. So you could say the gamble paid off, at least as it looks like right now for LSU and for Jayden Daniels' candidacy.
So Jayden Daniels stands now at 3,577 yards passing, 36 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions. He also broke a notable milestone in Saturday's game, going over 1,000 yards rushing for the season. He's at 1,014 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns. And that's obviously that's the big difference between him and Bo Nix, who's the other presumed front runner. We'll get to Michael Penix here in a moment. Bo Nix, 3,539 yards passing, basically about the same. He's third in the nation. Jayden Daniels is second in the nation. Bo Nix, 35 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But he has something like, see, I've got it on my notes here. He's got 128 yards rushing on the season. And 1,000 for Jayden Daniels. You talk about padding stats, and are they guilty? Were they guilty of padding stats on Saturday against Georgia State? Yes. Incidentally, to Georgia State's credit and to Sean Elliott's credit, the coach at Georgia State, did not raise a fuss and make us think about, hey, I can't believe you guys are piling on or anything like that. I think everybody understands what was going on, right? But no, he's Jayden Daniels almost has to do something spectacular and maybe, border on the edge of padding stats and playing too long and piling it up and running it up and so on and so forth because, again, as we've discussed, there is the probability, if not likelihood, that Oregon and Washington are both going to be playing on championship weekend, and LSU's not. So that leaves Jayden to have to make quite a mark. On Saturday, LSU plays Texas A&M at 11 a.m. Saturday, early kick on ESPN. So he's got to make a mark, does he not? Against one of the better defenses, actually, the pass defenses in the nation.
Yeah, he has one last chance to showcase his ability. Those other guys have two. Washington is in the championship game. Oregon has to beat Oregon State, I believe, to get in. Otherwise, Arizona could get in of all teams.
That guy, by the way, Jed Fish, Coach of the Year.
Oh, yeah. He's done a remarkable job. They've beaten 4 ranked teams for the first time since 1989 or something. Yeah, a heck of a job at Arizona. But, yeah, one last chance against arguably the best defense LSU's played so far this year. They're ranked like 8th in total defense. They're in the top 20 in rushing and passing. Even though LSU only had 28 points against Alabama, they still had, I think over 500 yards of offense or pretty close to it. So it's not like – you expect they're still going to get some yards and points, but it would impress if he had a dazzling day against Texas A&M, just like his candidacy could take a hit if he has a day kind of like Michael Penix had Saturday at Oregon State. It's in the rain. There's some drop passes. He completed less than 50% of his passes, threw for like 162 yards, ran for a touchdown, but his total offense number was below 200. And for that reason, it kind of looks at the moment like it's a 2-man race. Although he could get back in it,
he could easily get back in it.
But at the moment, it's Daniels Nix right now, and Harrison is out of it. He'll probably be a Heisman finalist, but that's about it.
We'll actually get to Harrison in relation to the Biletnikoff Award, but Malik Nabers later on. But yeah, Michael Penix is plus 600 now. I would just say, word of caution to everybody who's sort of written him out, or anybody who might have written him out. Yes, he's going to have the Apple Cup against a Washington State defense that's not great. 6th in the Pac-12 in pass defense, and then, of course, the Pac-12 championship game. Listen, if he goes out there and throws 5 or 6 touchdown passes against Washington State and then beats Bo Nix in the Pac-12 championship game and has a spectacular game.
Right back in it.
And he's absolutely right back in it, because I do think, and this is, to me, is going to be the big hurdle or the big obstacle in Daniels' Heisman campaign, is the fact that he will be in the clubhouse, on that championship weekend, and these two guys presumably will have the spotlight. Everybody will be watching. It's a Friday night game because the Pac-12 is weird. They play their
Friday night
championship
in
game
Vegas.
every other year. One year is Friday, the next year is Saturday, and this happens to be a Friday night game in Las Vegas. But I still think everybody will be watching, and it still, no matter how you slice it, will be the last game that anybody will have seen from any of these Heisman candidates. Bo Nix is going to go against Oregon State, which, as we've discussed, is not. That's going to be a difficult. We saw what Oregon State did against Michael Penix and Corvallis on Saturday. Now that was a caveat to that was that it looked awful. It was cold and raining. Everyone was dropping passes. It didn't seem like a place that anybody would really want to be.
And the difference in the game was a safety. The ball slipped through the punter's hands on the snap.
So that game was going to be difficult anyway, but Oregon State is difficult in and of themselves. Third in the Pac-12 in pass defense. And as we discussed before, as it relates to Bo Nix, this is the last, what used to be called the Civil War. I don't know what they call it now, but this will be the last one. And Oregon State is a solid team, number 15 in the nation after that loss, and a sturdy enough defense, 8-3 overall. And we saw, again, I hate to keep going back to this, but we saw what happened in Bedlam. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma were going to meet for the last time, and that was something else. This game will be in Eugene. That Bedlam game was in Stillwater, so it'll be a little bit of a different atmosphere. But if you don't think Oregon State's got something for Oregon on the way out, they will have their full. Even though the Beavers are out of the Pac-12 championship running, they will be at full attention going against Bo Nix. I guess I'll put this to you, Reed. What do you think Bo Nix has to do over the next 2 weeks to keep himself deeply in the discussion, if not overtake Jayden Daniels for the lead?
I think he just has to win. Just win your games, win the Pac-12.
Is that enough?
I don't think it'll be enough, but at a minimum, he has to win. And the same goes for Jayden. Like the LSU, at a minimum, they have to beat Texas A&M, I think, because a lot of voters are already holding the 3 losses against Jayden. In my opinion, I don't think that's super fair, but 4 losses, it gets dicey because 3 losses is already pushing it. So I think Jayden is going to have to fight against that, and to do that, you got to beat Texas A&M on Saturday. And I think the numbers, they're going to be better than Bo Nix. But if LSU has that loss and Bo Nix has these wins down the stretch, then I can't really see a way that they give a Heisman to a quarterback of a 4-loss team when there's another guy who's potentially going to the playoff.
It's an interesting thought. I suppose we're all just sort of operating on the assumption that LSU beats Texas A&M on Saturday, and I don't know that that's a wise assumption now that I think about it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a strong pass defense, and I would actually make the argument that because Jimbo Fisher is gone, now the pressure's off. The interim coach, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. I apologize, but he obviously had those guys ready to play. I grant you that it was tomato can weekend in the SEC this past weekend. The week before Thanksgiving weekend. Elijah Robinson. I could not think of his name. I'm sorry.
They didn't make it Petrino, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, I don't know. Do you really? I mean, that's a lot of baggage that goes along with him too. But don't we think that there was a fair amount of handcuffing that Jimbo Fisher had put on Petrino in terms of allowing him to call play?
I read an ESPN piece said that even though Petrino was calling the plays, it was still a lot of the plays that were in the playbook when Jimbo was calling.
Sure, and even if they weren't even if they weren't Jimbo's plays. He's the head coach. He has this right. I mean, he may say, "Look, I don't care what play you call, but I want a running play. I want this play coming to the I formation or whatever." And so that does handcuff you as a play caller. Well, now those handcuffs are gone, and Bobby Petrino may go full Bobby Petrino in this last game of the season because why wouldn't he? And you saw, incidentally, what happened last year when LSU went to go play in College Station against a team that presumably had nothing to play for, was very much out of it, and had a very, very disappointing season. And, Texas A&M had something for those guys last year as well.
And if you go back to 2021, the flip side, LSU A&M,
right.
with LSU having nothing to play for and A&M kind of having a good season, Max Johnson throws the touchdown at the end to Jare Jenkins. It was a cold, windy night. Nothing really to play for at the end of the season, and LSU took it to them, and they surprised them.
Well, and it was a similar situation in the standpoint that Ed Ogeron had already been fired, so he said, "Hey, watch
not?
this.
Yeah.
And we'll throw caution to the wind.
He was happy as can be after that game.
Boy, was he. That was the happiest we'd seen him in probably since the 2019 championship game. So one other thing we need to probably get to before we turn our focus elsewhere is, as we discussed before, the Biletnikoff Award. Malik Nabers, we sat on this podcast last week and said sort of, yeah, there's probably not a whole lot Malik Nabers can do because Marvin Harrison has that name recognition, and he is going to be a top draft pick in this spring's draft. And hey, he's a hell of a player too. And we just sort of assume that Harrison's got it in the bag. Well, Marvin Harrison had 3 catches for 30 yards Saturday against the Golden Gophers. And Ohio State has got to go play Michigan now, obviously in the big game, the biggest of games. And Michigan is second in the nation in pass defense. And not for nothing, but obviously Malik Nabers had another sterling game on Saturday against Georgia State, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns. He now stands at 1,424 yards. Harrison at 1,093 yards. He's got a, 331-yard lead on the guy. So let's throw it out there. Can Malik Nabers catch Marvin Harrison? Rab, I'll put this question to you first.
Yeah, he can, certainly. I mean, when you start to look at the disparity, he leads the nation in, as you said, in receiving yards and yards per game, like about 129 yards per game. A big lead on the next guy. And Harrison's averaging just under 100. It's not just about numbers, though. It's Marvin Harrison, I think it's reflected in the fact that he's still 4th or 5th best choice in the Heisman odds. Mm-hmm. So that tells you that most people expect that there will be 4 people invited to New York, and then he'll be the 4th. Mm-hmm. So you base that, no one's saying Malik Nabers is going to get invited to New York. But I mean, if Biletnikoff voters really examine it and say LSU's got 2 top flight receivers on their team, Brian Thomas leads the nation in touchdown receptions with 14, and throwing Kyron Lacey, and they all had 100-yard games Saturday, which is pretty remarkable too. But he should get some consideration. But it just feels like everybody feels like Harrison is the best player. I don't know where he's supposed to go in the NFL draft. I'm sure certainly top 10.
Top 10.
Top 5.
Top 5.
Like we're thinking top 5.
I know I was going to say that about Malik Nabers. So I would think it's just one of those things, kind of acclamation, and that it's going to be for him a kind of a career award, kind of like it was for Grant Delpit when he won the Jim Thorpe in 2019. So even though he had a better 18 than 19. So he's got a chance, more of a chance than I would have thought. But I just don't see them.
You're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah, I'm telling you there's a chance, but I'm not like we're saying there's a chance for Michael Penix, but in the Heisman, but I just don't see it.
Reed, what can Malik do to overtake him?
I think he has more of a chance now. I'm more confident now in his chances than I was going into the Georgia State game, specifically because Marvin Harrison had that game that he did on Saturday, only 30 yards. But again, he's got a real opportunity to show something this weekend against Michigan, because I think if in that game, if he puts up big numbers and has a good game, maybe catches a big touchdown pass, I think that's going to be all it takes to give him the award. Because like you said, Rab, I agree with you there. The voters want to give it to him. He's the best receiver in the country. The numbers might not be the best in the country right now, but a lot goes into those numbers. You got to factor in quarterback play, overall offense, targets, the way the defense sort of has to adjust to him based on his talent and skill level. So, the number, a lot goes into it. But again, the Biletnikoff Award, it should go to the receiver who's had the best season, not overall the best receiver. So I think Malik, if he has another big game, if he breaks the LSU career receiving yardage record this weekend, which is possible, then that'll help him a lot. But we'll have to see what Marvin Harrison does against Michigan.
For my money, I think if Marvin Harrison even has an average game, that's probably enough for him. I will say it might start to get interesting if as we pose this situation, this theoretical last week, let's just say he goes out there, Michigan shuts him down because they know they have to shut him down before they shut down anybody else. They shut him down for 2 catches, 19 yards or something like that, and Malik goes nuts.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we're gonna have to have a longer discussion. I still don't know. I still think he's got an uphill battle. But it's always possible. It's always possible that he can get himself back in that conversation. This is the LSU Sports Insider Podcast, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. You know where to find all our writers' great work. That's at theadvocate.com, and please subscribe. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. That's theadvocate.com/subscribe. We're here every Monday and Thursday, except for this week because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So we'll be here Monday and Wednesday on all our social channels, all our YouTube channels, specifically the LSU Tigers at NOLA.com channel. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us after the fact on those same YouTube channels. We are on Apple Podcasts, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and wherever other finer podcasts are found. So please check us out there. And get a hold of our LSU newsletter if you would. It's a daily newsletter, and there's plenty to get into, not just with football, but women's basketball, which we will discuss here shortly. If you want to get a hold of our newsletter, you do that at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. That's theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. And again, it's holiday season, it's gift giving season. So if you're looking for a gift for your favorite LSU fan, you ought to check out our LSU championship posters. Those are all available. They're iconic. You know them. You love them. To get a hold of them, you can go to store.theadvocate.com. Again, that's store.theadvocate.com. If you use the keyword insider, you'll get 15% off of your purchase. So, gentlemen, by the way, incidentally, we are brought to you by Champion Wealth Strategies today and every day. We appreciate them being aboard. To learn more about Champion Wealth Strategies, go to championwealthstrategies.com. Go there and plan like a champion today. So speaking of champions, the reigning national champion, LSU women's basketball team, is going through it right now. For those of you who don't know, who are just tuning in, have been off planet at any point in the last 5 days, you should know that Angel Reese was not in uniform for the Tigers game at Southeastern on Friday. Reed, you obviously are our LSU women's beat writer. I would just have you sort of reset this entire situation for us, if you would. And what do we know now?
Yes. Okay. So the short answer, to make a long story short, is that we don't know why Angel Reese did not play against Southeastern on Friday night, and we also don't know why she sat the second half on last Tuesday against Kent State. We're not going to speculate. We don't know what's going on. So I think it's just it's probably good just to lay out the facts, what we do know.
Mm-hmm.
So Kent State game last Tuesday, she starts just like normal. She takes a three-pointer, misses it. Mulkey gives her the hook, puts her on the bench, presumably because she thought it was a poor shot. Coaches do that all the time.
That was early in that game.
Early in the game on LSU's second possession. Coaches, you see that all the time. Not a huge deal. She plays another 12 minutes in the first half, and then we don't see her in the second half. We ask Kim Mulkey after the game, hey, why didn't we see Angel in the second half? I believe that was Rab who asked that. She said it was a coach's decision, and then she said I could elaborate on it, but I won't. Okay, so then Thursday comes around, we talk about the Southeastern game, and she doesn't really elaborate again on if she's going to play against Southeastern. She says you'll have to buy a ticket and see if she's going to play or not. So then the Southeastern game rolls around, and she's not in warm-up. She's not really anywhere to be seen. She's not on the bench, certainly, and so I think we can presume from that she didn't make the trip to Hammond with the team. And from there, that's all we know. LSU has a game tonight. We're recording this Monday morning. They play Texas Southern tonight. We don't know if she's going to play or not. Every time Kim Mulkey has been asked, what's going on, like when can we expect to see Angel again, she hasn't said anything. She hasn't elaborated on anything. So we certainly hope that everything is all right in Angel's world. We certainly wish her the best, make sure everything's all right. But at the end of the day, I think it's just wait and see, and see, next time we see her in uniform.
Rab, you are a columnist, so you are paid to have an opinion on this matter. I will say when Kim Mulkey says, "Hey, did not play, coach's decision," and then continues and says, "I could elaborate on that, but I won't." That says to me, anyway, I want to make this perfectly clear. This is my opinion here now. that says to me that it's less likely to be something related to an injury or an illness, because obviously, as you mentioned in your column that you had about Angel Reese, it's up at theadvocate.com, and this whole matter, Kim Mulkey, for example, was pretty specific about Flau'jae Johnson missing a couple of games and saying that it was because of the flu.
Yes.
So that's a case where the coach discusses either a player's injury or illness or something to that effect and goes into at least some detail, enough detail for us to know exactly what's going on. She does not do that when it comes to Angel Reese. So as a person who's paid to have an opinion, what does that tell you? What do you think? What do you make of this?
Yeah, so let's eliminate injury or illness. Let's eliminate grades, although her grades have come into question in a social media war between her mom and Flau'jae Johnson's mom.
Which none of that's been corroborated.
None of that's been corroborated. If you recall, though, she was not a finalist for a National Player of the Year award last year that had academics as one of the components, and LSU got a little defensive then about that, and I want to talk about her. Her grade says she's eligible to play, but obviously it wasn't good enough for her to be eligible for this award. So anyway, her whole time, let's assume the whole time her grades haven't been great, but she played the first half against Kent State, as we said, so didn't play the second half. So they didn't get a bad report card at halftime or something. So it's not that. So one is left with potential of some kind of, we could say some kind of mental issue, I guess, some kind of issue like that, or it's some kind of suspension for violating team rules or doing something detrimental to the team, and that's what you have to be left with, because they won't confirm even that she's suspended. Kim said after the game in Hammond that she's still part of the team, that they hope to have her back soon. But it's not. It's very unclear, and of course, it's just led to a lot of speculation. And of course, Mulkey went on to say, when someone tried to follow up with a question, said, "That's all you need to know." Well,
it's not all we need to know. We need to know more.
I beg to differ. You can say this is one of the two most prominent players in the country, her and Caitlin Clark at Iowa, and Caitlin Clark is still playing, and Angel Reese is not. Why is that? I don't expect any coach to say she's suspended for this specific reason. I don't expect, it would be nice, but I don't expect any coach, Kim Mulkey or Brian Kelly or Jay Johnson or Iowa's women's basketball coach, to say that. But I do expect that you can say she's suspended from team activities for right now, because you're just leaving it open to all kinds of speculation. I've heard and read some wild rumors about why Angel Reese is out, and look, it's clearly a huge problem, not one that you didn't see could potentially be coming this year after all the lauding and fabulous things and prizes that they got in the off season. Kateri Poole, who was also suspended for the Kent State game. Well,
we
she
don't
didn't
know
play.
that.
We don't know whether
she was suspended.
To be perfectly
you
clear,
want to say, as my opinion, she was suspended.
Right.
But
We don't know specific. Just to make it perfectly clear, we don't know for sure that anybody's been suspended or not
Kateri
suspended.
Poole played in Hammond, though, right?
She did. She did not play against Kent State.
Yeah, she didn't play at all against Kent State, but she came back. As she said in the offseason, it was king cake at every stop for LSU in this offseason. And so can one think that maybe a little of that went to the star player's head? Yeah, potentially so. But it's a bad situation, and you could call it a crisis for this LSU basketball team that was the odds-on favorite before the season to repeat as national champions and started as preseason number one, and now is looking, all that looks very shaky at this point.
I want to make something clear. Well, I'm going to put it to you like this. Again, this is my opinion. I'm speaking out of my own voice on this matter now. I would say that for all those who are having a fun time with all this and taking pot shots, whether they're fair or not, I would just say that if I were 21, had I been 21 and somebody dropped a couple cool million in my lap and put me on private planes and flew me all over the universe and faded me at every step,
took you backstage to meet Beyonce.
I can tell you, I would have been hell on wheels. My head would not have been able to fit into this podcast studio. Okay, so I think it's fair to say, hey, let's step back and take a look around and say, would any of us be in a different situation in terms of our approach to pretty much everything at this point. So you made mention in the same column, Rab, at theadvocate.com that you think Angel needs LSU and LSU needs Angel, and they've got to figure this out. If they are to continue as the front runner, still the front runner to repeat as national champion, and or just generally speaking to stay sort of in the mix, in that handful of 6, 8, 10 teams. Might be more this year, actually, which is something, an interesting development in women's basketball in general. For 20 some odd years, in a given season, you'd have maybe 4, 5, 6 teams that could legitimately win the championship, and that's it. But anyway, LSU clearly had the greatest collection of talent going into this season, and it was going to have to be sort of we're going to have to piece this together because you've got star freshmen coming in, Michaela Williams specifically, transfers coming in, Anissa Morrow, Haley Van Lith, and then their veterans coming in. So this was a new sort of patchwork thing you were going to have to put together. But they had the highest collection of talent, the greatest collection of talent out of anybody else in the nation. But now without Angel, if this is to continue, if this absence is to continue for any sort of significant amount of time, then maybe their talent pool is only on par with South Carolina or UConn. South Carolina, incidentally, kicking a certain body part and taking names right now. They look like they're all business and treating the season as all business. So I don't know, Rabbit, where does this team stand in terms of where they are without Angel? And for that matter, how far can they go without her? And how quickly do they need her back? All that. Just anywhere you want to go with that.
Well, from a talent standpoint, they need her back, obviously, to win the national championship. They still have a very formidable team, but it's a team that's maybe getting to the Sweet 16, without her or something like that, in my opinion. I mean, it's not.
Could they? Could they? I'm of the opinion that, if things break right, are we sure they still couldn't go back to the Final Four without her?
No, they could. I mean, you might need a little help. And like the season kind of parted for LSU last season, obviously. Indiana was a tough seed in their regional. They got beat. They only had to play Miami, who was a Cinderella, coming through, beat Utah. Was their toughest team to face. But yeah, it was they'd need a bit of that maybe. But yeah, they could. I'm just saying.
They would not be the prohibitive favorite.
They would not be. No, not at all. And they would. They might have a hard time winning the SEC now because with they were going to have a hard time anyway. But South Carolina is looking, as you said, is playing very well with the then maybe drama free. But yeah, LSU needs her for sure to be the best team it can be. If you get her playing like she played last year, you've got this great inside threat and you got a great outside threat with Michaela Williams, who has been their best player in the first 5 games overall on balance. The 42 points against Kent State, and just generally speaking, has just been their best player. But but she needs them too. The people. One of the things you hear, she could transfer to a certain school in the East or something like that, in the Southeast. Yeah, you just sit out the rest of the season, and we think you sit out next season and ask for a waiver or something like that. And as we've seen with Jalen Cook on the men's team, the NCAA is not too keen on granting
They're a little less forgiving right now.
Second transfer waivers right now. So that doesn't seem like an option. You go to the WNBA, but you're taking a big pay cut most likely in the WNBA. Do all these NIL deals and things. She's got endorsements and things, but does it transfer? Does she have the same platform in the WNBA that she has in college basketball? You got to think some of these things would go away. And right now, her valuation is second best among women's college athletes, according to On3.com, behind only Olivia Dunn, the LSU gymnast. So it's a situation where they both need each other. But can it be? That leaves the question: if she comes back. And I think a lot of people think she will eventually. My jury's still out, but I think a lot of people do. Can it be the same? Can you put all the pieces back together again? Because, as I said, chemistry was going to be an issue for this team to begin with anyway. Returning veterans like her and Flaugier and Kateri Poole and some others. Your transfers like Haley Van Lith and Anissa Morrow. Freshmen like Michaela Williams and Del Rosario and Kent and all these players coming in. It was a tough situation to begin with, and now they're behind in terms of creating that chemistry. And now it can be done, the 77 Yankees squabbled all the way to the World Series.
I actually brought that up on the desk earlier.
Those guys didn't like each other at all.
Richard Jackson hit a 3-run homer and then take a couple swings at Billy Martin in the dugout when he got back.
So it can be done.
I remember it well. I remember that World Series well.
Very good.
Reed was not born.
But it was. It's not what you want, and it's not the ideal situation.
And from a short-term perspective, they play Texas Southern tonight. Then Thanksgiving, they go to the Cayman Islands, play a couple games. They play Niagara and then Virginia. And then the following week is the big kahuna, as you like to say, Perryn. Virginia Tech comes to town.
Right.
So we knew it would be sort of like an uneven start. We knew it wouldn't look great from the start. We knew it wouldn't be a completely smooth operation from the start. And so, you need time to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And you need everybody on the court to get reps together and to play together to figure it out. If you don't have all your pieces together, it's going to take longer before you hit your stride, before you figure it out. So if you don't have Angel Reese in the fold, however much time she misses, that's going to prolong the learning curve. It's going to prolong the period of time that you have to figure it out. And that gets dicey once SEC play starts and once you start to get into February and March.
I will say, wouldn't you gentlemen both agree? And that, look, what did they start, 23-0 last year or something like that? And so they clearly had a great year from start to finish, but I would argue, I don't think anybody would argue that they didn't play their best basketball down the stretch. And very specifically, actually, the championship game, that was the best game they played all year. So it can be done, I think, and it can be done in relatively short order. You two gentlemen know, speaking of another reference that Reed may or may not get, but you two gentlemen know that I had said during a preseason that this was going to be a different year, even for Kim, four-time national champion, member of the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. This was still going to be a different kind of year for Kim. She's obviously had plenty of teams with plenty of celebrity players, superstar players, maybe with egos themselves, but this is the first time she's going to handle a team with players who are international celebrities and millionaires. So this, to me, this was, again, to go back, 30 some odd years, this was going to have to be a Chuck Daly. You heard me say that, during the summer, this is going to have to be a Chuck Daly type of coaching job. And I say that because, they chose him to coach the Dream Team for a reason, because he was so good at managing all these huge egos and getting them still to all play together. I personally still think it could be done. I think all amends can be made. And this ship could get rowing back in the right direction. In the meantime, Reed, I would just ask you, what you've seen out of this team so far. I think we all agree. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think we would all agree that Van Lith hasn't quite hit her stride yet. Certainly, Michaela Williams has put on a show the last several games, and just sort of where you see them going and where they need to the next sort of steps they need to take. Angel or no Angel?
You want to see the shooting improve a little bit. I think you want to see Haley's shots start to fall. That'll come. She hit a couple big shots, big threes against Southeastern, so that'll come. It's just overall, I just want to see them more in sync offensively, just more of a flow to their offense, more of a rhythm to it. Again, like I said, you don't expect it to be perfect from the jump. But you need time to sort of, iron out the wrinkles, I guess. And the thing that I always come back to, more of a modern reference for y'all, the Miami Heat 2010, the first LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh team, that was the first real super team.
I didn't think he was going to mention Bob Cousy. No, the Celtics in the 50s.
First real super team. Obviously, they won 2 championships, but it took them a while to figure it out. It was a couple months there at the start of the first season where it was rough. It looked kind of rough, and so I think you just gotta it just takes time. They were 6 games in, they're 5-1. The record's fine, but again, they don't look like a well-oiled machine yet, and that's okay. But they need time, they need Angel in place in order to have those reps together to get to a point where they are comfortable later in the season.
And the similarity, the benefit of basketball, college basketball and college baseball is that you can get it together in time for the postseason. That's the most important time of the year. I think there's a lot of similarities. I mean, the LSU baseball team was 7-7 in their 14 games going to the last 14 games going to the NCAA tournament this year, and they turned it on and obviously won the title. And Kim Mulkey had a she at Baylor she went to 4 Final Fours, 3 times they won the title, and one other time they went and they were like a 10-loss team. I'm like, I can see LSU, as we've said, have more losses and still making more losses than last year, only 2, and making a deep run. So it can be done, but as Reed said, the learning curve extends and the chemistry, and you got to get Angel Reese when she comes back, if she comes back, playing like she did last year, because we haven't seen the effort. I don't think that she had last year, just being relentless on the boards, and certainly in the show in the Colorado game. Maybe it's gotten a little better in the game since then, but that putback machine, somebody cleaning up someone's miss and scoring. That's what she did so well so many times last year. It's still on balance a better team talent wise than it was in 2022-23. But talent isn't everything.
That's right. So the LSU women will play Texas Southern at 7 p.m. Monday. Reed will be there for that, obviously, and all the games as we go down the road. The LSU football team will play Texas A&M. You're going to have to set your alarms, get your scrambled eggs ready, and all that jazz for the season finale against Texas A&M. It's 11 a.m. Saturday in Tiger Stadium. It'll be on ESPN. We will be here for all of it. We will be back here on Wednesday, as we typically are here Monday and Thursday, as we say. We'll be here Wednesday to get ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday. You can catch us on all of our social channels, on our YouTube channel, specifically LSUTigersAtNOLA.com YouTube channel. You can catch us live or after the fact on that same channel. You can also catch us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where other finer podcasts are found. And in the meantime, please subscribe to The Advocate. Support your local journalist. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. That's theadvocate.com/subscribe. And to stay up to date, you get a hold of our LSU newsletter. You can sign up at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. That's theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are brought to you today and every day by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more about their services, please go to championwealthstrategies.com. That's championwealthstrategies.com. We certainly appreciate them being aboard. Contact them and plan like a champion today. And also, finally, the holiday season is here. And so gift-giving season is here. And so if you've got that LSU fan in your life, or you want to gift yourself, if you're tuning into this podcast, you probably are a big LSU football fan, a big LSU sports fan. We've got all our commemorative championship posters that are, they're of course, you see them in doctors' offices and restaurants all over town, all over this fine state and across this nation. They're iconic. Get a hold of your own. You can do that at store.theadvocate.com. Again, that's store.theadvocate.com. If you use the keyword insider, you can get 15% off your order. We will be back here on Wednesday, and we certainly appreciate Reed having hopped aboard on this podcast for the last several weeks as Wilson Alexander has enjoyed his honeymoon, a well-earned honeymoon with his new bride. So we will welcome him back. We will bring back Reed, obviously, later in this season to continue to discuss LSU women's basketball and whatever else may come up. For Reed and for Scott Rabalais, I am Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.